House of EdTech, episode 67.
Hi, this is Danny Kennis from DannyKennis.com, and you're listening to the House of EdTech with the amazing Chris Nesi.
This episode of House of EdTech is brought to you by SummerPD.com. Does traditional PD leave you underwhelmed? Check out Summer PD, a 10-week at-your-own-pace program that explores educational technologies like Google Classroom, apps, formative assessments, and more. Take advantage of their awesome summer bundle promotion and get all 10 courses for just $25 by using the coupon code HouseofEdTech, all one word. And by purchasing this, you gain 24/7, 365-day access to the courses that you need for professional development on your schedule. Go to summerpd.com and sign up today. Welcome to the House of EdTech Podcast. I am your host, Christopher Nesi, and the House of EdTech explores how technology is changing the way teachers teach and the impact that technology is having in education. My objectives include discussing technology that is changing our classrooms and schools and sharing tools and tips that you can hear about today and use tomorrow. I talk to teachers, leaders, and creators just like you and have them share their stories. The purpose? Whether you use it or not, technology is changing the way we teach and how our students learn. And welcome back inside the House of EdTech. Again, this is episode number 67, and I record this here late in the evening, but there's a special reason for that. I am not alone. You might be able to hear him in the background. I don't know, but it's almost like he's right here in the studios. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, podcast listeners of all ages, please welcome back to the House of EdTech my special guest co-host from Utah, Derrick Larson. How are you, Derrick?
Thanks, Chris. Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me back on the show.
It's been a long time coming. You were a great guest back in somewhere in the 20s, I believe, episode number 22, I think.
It's been a while, definitely.
Yeah, but I'm glad we finally hooked up. I've been promising you to the audience all summer.
Hey, it takes time, man. You got to let these things simmer a little bit. You know, it's like a fine cooking of some sort. Cooking something, you got to let it simmer out.
Yeah, you've never seen my Rachel Ray video, have you?
Oh, I've seen your Rachel Ray video. You definitely needed that help there.
I did, but I'm much better now.
I'm glad to hear. Poor Kate.
Yeah, so you're here. You're going to be guest hosting the episode, and we've got all the great features that every episode has, such as an EdTech thought, which you're going to jump in and you're going to do that for us, and I'm going to play off of your words and what's almost grinding your gears and your suggestion. We have the EdTech Recommendation, which, go figure, I'm a teacher. It's like I gave you homework. Derrick has the EdTech Recommendation this episode. I've got the House of EdTech VIP. But more importantly, you've got great anytime, anywhere PD right here on the House of EdTech. Derrick, are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do this, Chris.
All right. First, we've got a little bit of feedback. Do you know Brent Warner, Derrick?
I know Brent by name. I don't believe we've ever met, but I do know Brent by name.
Have you listened to his edtech.tv podcast?
I think I've listened to a couple of episodes, one-off episodes, but I have not yet fully subscribed. I probably need to do that.
Okay, one, you need to subscribe to edtech.tv podcast. But Brent called me out because in the last episode, number 66, I had said that I would have pictures of the new studio, and I did not put them in the show notes, and he called me out on Twitter. So
I'm glad he called you out, because I was going to call you out tonight because I noticed there were no pictures, and I need pictures.
I've got the final pictures, but people will understand why there are no pictures when I talk about something else that happened with the House of EdTech. So,
oh no.
But Brent did call me out. So Brent, I hope more people subscribe to your podcast. Edtech.tv is the website. Edtech.tv podcast is Brent's awesome podcast. So go along, everybody, with Derrick. Subscribe to it, listen to it, and tell Brent that I sent you. And thank you for calling me out, buddy.
I'll be adding it very shortly, as soon as we finish up tonight.
Very good, Derrick. You're a good dude.
I'm excited.
And also back in episode 65, I did challenge the audience to learn something new, as you recall, Derrick, and somebody actually, well, not somebody actually, but somebody has reached out to me to let me know that they learned how to do something. So I want to give a shout out to Jen Giffen. She is at Virtual GIF on Twitter, VIRTUALGIFF, and she learned how to make dill pickles, and she tweeted a picture at me of the dill pickles she made.
You can make dill pickles?
Heck yeah, Derrick. Where do you live? They don't make pickles in Utah?
Well, I don't know anybody who makes their own pickles. I just buy mine at the store. I mean, I figure obviously you make them. I had never thought of somebody making them.
I don't want to sound like
awesome.
a know-it-all, but I have made pickles before, and Jen's pickles looked delicious. And they were already sliced up in the jar. She did them in like the mason jars. They look good. The dill is right in there. They look so fresh.
I'll be checking out those pictures pretty quick here.
Here, you can hold me accountable. I will have the tweet from Jen embedded in the show notes for this episode on chrisnessy.com/67. So people can see Jen's dill pickles. So first, thank you, Jen, for participating in my challenge. Not this episode, but again, by the end of the summer, I will let everybody know what I learned how to do. Now, Derrick, are you going to be participating?
You know, I've been learning a lot, but I've not been formally participating, and you'll find out a little more why. Things have been crazy on my end and Casa Larson, but I'll be sharing that. It sounds like later.
Yes, you will. I know, but I'm excited to have you share that with the audience. So that's going to be a fun conversation.
Oh yeah.
But real quick, before we move on, for those listening, obviously, if you ever have an EdTech question that you would like answered on the podcast, tweet the question, use the hashtag House of EdTech. You can Vox me, Mr. Nessie on Twitter, MRNESI, or you can use the old House of EdTech hotline, which is 732-903-4869. And also a quick shout out to my Patreon subscribers. They are my awesome supporters. So shout out to Peggy George, Mark Grindell, Dan Gallagher, and Jeff Herb from the Instructional Tech Talk podcast, also part of the Education Podcast Network. Thank you to my supporters. And if you want to become an awesome supporter, just go to chrisnessy.com/awesome to learn more. And speaking of awesome, Derrick, in addition to the new studio, chrisnessy.com also got a facelift, and you've seen it. What do you think?
It looks amazing. I mean, the new studio. I saw some of the Deering pictures, and I think it's awesome. Your physical studio got a massive facelift, and I really feel like your digital studio, this website, probably has an equally, if not more, impressive, because the thing is running quick as can be. It's very smooth. Everything's working out very nicely. I'm loving it, man. It looks fantastic.
I am very excited because in addition to the new website, I've also updated the podcast cover art and logo and branding for the podcast itself. So if you liked my podcast cover art where it looked like I also sold houses, I'm sorry, that's gone. I still look just as handsome, but I wanted to give the artwork a facelift. That's that graphic designer in me. So
yeah, definitely. Although I must say, Realtor Nessie was pretty good.
Realtor Nessie. Well, it's still my Twitter avatar, so I still want people to see my face.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. And the new website is self-hosted WordPress. So I have left the free Google Blogger. So I'm paying for hosting through domain.com, and that's where I have, chrisnessy.com, the domain. So I got it all together, and I'm very excited. It just makes it a lot easier to post the show notes. Now every episode in the back catalog, you can get to by going to chrisnessy.com/ and then just put the number of the episode. So 1 through now 66, 67, you can get to the show notes for every episode very quickly and very easily. So I'm very excited about that.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, that's a lot of work on your end, Chris. Honestly, I think you've done a great job, and I'm sure it's taken you quite a bit, but you should be very proud of how it's turned out, because it looks fantastic. And like I said, it's like butter, super smooth, and that's always super important with websites.
Thank you. And I like when you said that it moves fast. So that makes me happy.
Oh yeah, definitely very, very quick. Not that the other one wasn't quick, but you can feel an actual quickness to it. The speed is very nice. So
It's like I tapped into the, I'll make a comics reference. I tapped into the Speed Force, and I, like Barry Allen, I am, run, Barry, run. I am moving faster now.
Oh, geez. And here I thought you were Superman, but now you're pulling out Flash for us. Okay.
I'm a fan of all things DC, so you know how it goes.
That's fantastic.
Oh, wait, speaking of comics and the fact that it's my show, publicly want to thank you for the little Superman figurine you gave me when we met. I mean, I thanked you when I saw you, but I don't think I told people that you gave me and Stacy a little gift, and AJ got his as well. You got us some cool little...
I was wondering if AJ ever got his, because he wasn't there, and I thought, these guys are going to totally steal Batman.
I did. I gave it to him at Ed Camp Leader earlier this summer. So
nice.
He got it. He was very appreciative. Oh,
you're very, very welcome. I was happy to do it. I ran across them at a dollar store. It wasn't anything major, folks. It was just, I saw them and I thought, I've got to do it. They had Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and the Joker. And so, of course, I took the Joker because I got to be the villain. Somebody's got to play the villain role.
Yeah, absolutely. There's got to be somebody running around causing trouble.
Although I'm going to say I'm probably more like the Jack Nicholson Joker, not so much the Jared Leto. Now, I haven't watched Suicide Squad yet, but I've heard his Joker. They're very different Jokers. So I'm going to say I'm more the Jack Nicholson Joker. Okay,
that's fair. I also have not seen Suicide Squad yet as we record this, but I will be seeing it relatively soon, but I haven't seen it yet. Yeah. Probably by the time this comes out, I'll have seen it.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be that quick, but I'm hoping to be quick on it.
Okay. Run, Derrick, run. No.
I know, seriously.
All right, enough comic book talk. People didn't come here to hear us talk about comics.
But wasn't that part of it? Podcasting and comic books? I thought they went hand in hand.
You know what they do? There's a lot of great comic book podcasts out there. But speaking of great podcasts, I have two, not commercials, we'll call them promos, audio promos, for two more podcasts that you're probably going to want to subscribe to, and other people may be interested. Now, if these two podcasts aren't for you, they might be for somebody you know, so please share them and let them know that you heard about it here on the House of EdTech. The first one is the Ltl Podcast, and that is from friend of the show, Mick Shuren. So take it away, Mick.
This is at Mick Shuren,
at Kingster Chris, and at Scott Hargrove 4, and we are the LTL Podcast, where you can get educated on all things leadership, technology, and learning.
A couple of times a month, we get together to pick each other's brains, share what we learn, and, of course, laugh a lot.
And after you finish listening to this episode of the House of EdTech, make sure you head on over to iTunes and find the Leadership, Technology, and Learning podcast. Oh, and if you like it, leave us a nice review. And always remember, if you can't get out of it, get into it.
How awesome does that podcast sound?
That sounds amazing. Now, I got to ask, is that their actual voices, or are they just pulling voices? Because that was too cool.
They are from a place I would call the South, so I think that's them.
That's them? That makes it even better then. I was wondering, are they pulling these voices, or is that the real thing? But if it's the real thing, that's awesome. That's amazing. I love the accent. Yeah, it's awesome. They are on Twitter. You can follow their show, LTL_podcast. And you can, in addition to iTunes, you can also get to them on SoundCloud, and it is soundcloud.com/leadtechnologylearn. And you can check out the LTL podcast. Excellent. That's one. I'll have to add that one as well. Now, the next one, I don't know if this would necessarily be for you, but you, like me, also have younger children. And this next one is directly off the Education Podcast Network. And this is from Liz Ha, who is the host of the Early Childhood Research Podcast. So let's hear Liz.
Hi, I'm Liz from the Early Childhood Research Podcast. We interview academics, teachers and parents about the latest happenings in early childhood research and what that means for our homes and classrooms today. We answer questions like, what ways should your kids get moving to help their memory and recall? What are the best tips for integrating a special needs child into your classroom? What are the most important addition strategies to teach young children for long-term success? What simple music activities can you add to your free local playgroup to help your kids transition successfully into school? This is Liz from the Early Childhood Research Podcast.
Thank you, Liz. And Liz's website is liz's-earlylearningspot.com, and that's LIZS-early-learning-spot.com. And because that's a tougher address, there will be a link to that in the show notes. And Liz is, where do you think Liz is from, Derrick?
I guess she's from the UK, other side of the pond, if I would.
Other side of the pond, but you have to go down under.
Oh, we're going to Australia.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. She definitely had that British backing accent, but the Australian, I wouldn't have picked that one up.
Yeah, she is from down under, and she is the only international podcast on the network, and she does a great job. And there are quite a few episodes of hers that have helped me with miles. I'm not going to lie.
Oh, fantastic! I've got a 7-year-old, almost 4-year-old, and a 15-month-old. So I better check those out.
And actually, you have a little one. My little guy Colton, he will be 1 coming up here in the middle of August. So the little guy is coming up on 1 year. Very exciting here.
And August is a good month, Chris. I'm going to just say it. That's my birthday month, so August is a good month.
When's your birthday?
At a good time. 23rd of August. So
I don't know if I'll talk to you live before then, but I'll say happy birthday to Derrick here on the podcast.
I'll take it. Thanks so much, sir. Appreciate that.
No problem. So, are you ready for the Edtech Thought?
I'm ready for the Edtech Thought.
All right, let's transition over there. This episode's EdTech Thought is called Analog Love, from a great blog post written by a great blog author, and he just happens to be right here with me on the podcast. So, Derrick, let's talk about analog love.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks, Chris. So, I was just going through the history of House of EdTech, and I've actually appeared 3 times, and two of them were App Smackdowns. And the most recent App Smackdown, which was last December, I brought up some analog tools. And if you remember, I talked about my Field Notes notebooks, my Fisher Space Pen, the fact that I love fountain pens and these analog tools that many people in this digital age are kind of saying, hey, we're going to put this away. We want to focus on the tech, on the digital and all this. And that breaks my heart, because I think tech is more than just digital. Tech can be any kind of a tool you're working with. It's the difference of high tech versus low tech. And and one of the ways I kind of wrote about this was back in 2014. I wrote about my favorite place to go is up on Cedar Mountain, which is down here in southern Utah, to my wife's family cabin, because there is no cable, there's no internet, there's barely power, and it forces me to unplug. And it is amazing to get away from all the digital crazy and kind of refocus my brain a little. And I love it. Absolutely love it.
So needless to say, when you go to this place, that would not be the time to book you to co-host the show with me.
No, definitely. Although, to be honest, it's only about a 15-minute drive down the hill to my in-laws' house. So I really could if need be. But that's what's so special about this mountain, is that when you get up there, you feel like you're literally hundreds of miles away from anybody, from civilization. And it's only a 10-minute, 15-minute drive from my in-laws' house in downtown Cedar City. So it's such a beautiful place, because we can get up there and get out of it, but we can still come back down and, do something for part of the day, but then get back away and refocus our energies. So it's amazing.
Now, in addition to some of your unplugged tools like the Space Pen, which is totally cool, and I got to see your pen when we met earlier this year. So
yes, you did.
I believe I autographed a napkin, so hopefully that's framed in the Derrick Larson studio. But that's a whole nother story.
Oh, definitely.
What are some of the things when you're not in this vacation spot? When you're just at home on a regular day at any time, what do you do to unplug, and what are some of your favorite analog activities, let's say?
So that's a great question. I like to read, but I like to read paper books. I like to read the Dead Tree version. Now I have a lot of.
I've never heard that before.
You ever heard that? The Dead Tree version?
The Dead Tree edition. That's great.
Oh yeah. It's that old school. We're going to go back historical there. But I love ebooks. I love audiobooks. That's my favorite form of reading actually is listening to audiobooks while I drive. But, something about holding an actual book in your hand and having that paper, like for instance, I know that many of our friends, Stacy Lindis, for example, rushed out in the Midnight Madness to get the newest Harry Potter book. And she just loved having it. And for me, it's more fun to go out and go get that physical book than it is to have it digitally. Now, if I like the book a ton, I'll actually buy it digitally so I can have it more easily accessible throughout the day or wherever I'm at. But I love having physical paper books, and I love reading on paper books. So that's one of my favorite things to do when I can. Now, I've got 3 children, like I said earlier, so it doesn't happen as often as I want. But that's probably one of my favorite things to do is just curl up with a good book and read for a little bit.
I'm not as big a reader as I should be, but to share my favorite analog activity, and this may or may not count, but I'm going to say it counts, is I like doing stuff out in the garage in terms of like building and doing some of the woodworking and you've heard me talk about them on Twitter and even on Voxer, my home maker space, like rebuilding the studio, building the desk, and just doing some of the other things I like to do. Like when I redid the kitchen, like I like DIY home projects. So to me, that's a way where, I'm not on Twitter, I'm not periscoping or podcasting or, surfing the web. So that's how I pull away. Like I work with my hands.
I totally call that analog, honestly, Chris. Because to me, analog is just not that constant digital. You're using power tools. You're not necessarily using maybe you are using hand tools. I don't know. But I think there's a difference between a power tool and designing it something in like CAD, for example. You're using computer-aided drafting and designing. I think that's very different than actually getting out and holding the wood in your hand and building it and shaping it to what you want it to be. What you've done this summer with your studio, I think is a great example of an excellent analog activity that most people would never even dare attempt. I'm one of those people that I don't know that I would dare attempt, at least not initially. I've always wanted to buy a house and strip it down to the studs and start fresh. The wife's not fully on board there yet. One day maybe we will, but not quite. So I think you're definitely in an analog space when you're working with your hands in that manner.
Well, then I would have to say that I then do cheat a little bit because I do a lot of my learning from YouTube. So I may have the iPad to watch a video that's going to show me, how to get this cut on the table saw or, how to make a jig or, I'll watch, like I like to mud and tape drywall, but I'll watch 5 or 6 videos on it just to kind of refresh my mind about, all right, here's some technique, here's some things to think about. And then, the iPad goes away and then I go and do the task. But I guess that would be my analog love.
I don't think that's cheating at all either. I think honestly, you're taking it and you're using the tools you have to make sure you have the skills necessary, and then you go. Like for example, in my classroom, I often had, we had access to Chromebooks. I had some iPads in there. But when we do projects, I'd have kids would ask for poster board, paper, pencils, markers. And to me, it's kind of a matter of here's what I want you to do, project X here. You figure out how you want to make that work. And for me, that was always empowering for my students because, yes, we want to always think that kids are going to pick the highest tech thing and run with it. And oftentimes they do. But I try to teach my kids, pick the tool that's best for what you're working with. And if you really want your project to work out with art supplies instead of, digitally, go for it. And I think that's very empowering to have kids realize that I don't have to be on my device 24/7. I can still create and have beautiful things and have amazing quality stuff, even if it's not like, Disney quality drawing and animation. They can still make great quality work that is the best they can do, and it really is wonderfully educational. So that's kind of where it comes from me. I don't want kids to get so so involved with the tech, they forget that, hey, I got a pencil in my hand that, 100 years ago, that was considered high tech. And so we have to remember that the definition of high tech changes over time.
Absolutely. So whether it's working in the classroom or working in your home doing projects, it all comes down to choosing the best tool to get the job done the right way.
Excellent. Yeah, exactly.
And where did you originally blog about this, if you can share your blog again with the audience?
Yeah, definitely. So I read at a site called Edtech Babble, EdTechBabble.net. So edtechbabble.net. I kind of came across the idea of the desire that I tend to talk, and I'm a little verbose in writing at times, and I like education and technology, and so I kind of merged the two together in a babbly manner, which allows me to write about anything outside of the education technology realms. So that's where it's found, edtechbabble.net.
Great. So make sure that you guys check out edtechbabble.net and let us know what your analog love is. You can tweet at myself and also at Derrick. He is at Lars3, the number 3, EB on Twitter. And you can also leave a comment in the show notes for this episode at chrisnessy.com/67. That is our EdTech thought. And the fun doesn't end for you, Derrick, because you've also got this episode's EdTech recommendation. So what do you have for us?
So I've actually got two things. My first recommendation I threw out to Chris as we were planning. He said, nope, I've already done that. We've already done that. We had a couple of there. But, a couple of things kept coming back to my mind. And one of them is I've always felt like I have to have a way to communicate with parents. And my goal is to make that as easy as possible for parents to communicate with me. And of course, we have email addresses. That's just ubiquitous with education at this point. Every teacher has an email address. Hopefully, every student has one, whether they're able to use it or not. My elementary kids were not able to use email yet. But email is not always the best way. And so some teachers will give out their cell phones. And, I don't ever feel comfortable with that. Like I would like to keep my phone number private to just friends and family and people who I want to have it. And nothing against the parents, but I didn't want them to have my phone number. So what I did early on is I went to Google Voice and I created a Google Voice phone number, which some people say, hey, how is that different than giving them your regular phone number? To me, it was a very different idea because I could give them that phone number and not worry about having that separation. Because if my phone rings and I see it has the Google Voice phone number and the caller ID, I don't have to answer it. I can let it go to voicemail and I'm not going to wonder who's this calling, because Google Voice does some amazing things. One, it has a spam filter to begin with, and it picks up on different numbers that tend to be a little spammy, and it actually blocks a lot of those for you without you even knowing it. I go in every now and then check, and I've got a huge list of blocked calls that I didn't block. Google's just picked up on that. The second nice thing I like about Google Voice is that if I don't answer, they'll leave a message and it will transcribe that message and send it to me via text message and via email. So I can wait and get the text message and see, is this an urgent enough call I need to call the parents back right now? Or can it wait till the next day? And that feature alone has been amazing for me. And so if you don't want to give out your cell phone number, which I would actually recommend you don't give out your actual cell phone number, go to Google Voice and create a Google Voice number. That number can be forwarded to not only your phone, but also to your computer. So if you're sitting at your computer and you get a phone call, it'll actually ring to your Google account and you can get it from there. And so to me, that just made a lot of sense. It's been really, really great to have. And it's fun because you can actually pick your number to an extent. And if you want to have it be like a part of a word, you can type that in and see what's available. And the day and age we're in now, even if the number doesn't match your local number, but it makes sense for why you're picking it, you should be good to go, because most people are using cell phones these days anyway. So it doesn't really matter the whole long distance scheme there. So I would say definitely check with Google Voice.
And I've got to jump in here too and say that from my own experience, I've been using Google Voice basically since it came out, and I use it personally. So if you're somebody who I know and I give you my cell phone number, it's a Google Voice number that forwards to my phone. And actually I took advantage of the whole part that you mentioned about you could like make a number like out of words and stuff. So the last 4 digits of my cell phone number that I give out to people is 6374. And guess what that spells?
Nessie.
You got it. NESI, baby. And of
That's
course,
awesome.
and of course, the House of EdTech hotline, 732-903-4869, is also a Google Voice number that goes directly to voicemail. And then I'll get an email in my House of EdTech email that lets me know when people leave voicemails and all that good stuff. And it's great here on the show because I could download those voicemails and I can play them like I've done in the past. So yeah, I endorse Google Voice. What else you got, Derrick?
Yeah. So
go ahead,
the
sorry.
other one, no, you're great. I like I said, Google Voice, go get it, people. Go check it out. It's free. It's just like all the Google products. Just know that because it's a Google product, it may go away, but I think this one's going to stick around because they need this voice data. So
and they've been saying for years,
voice recognition better.
I was going to say they've been saying for years that the ability to make free phone calls was going to be going away. We're going on 5 or 6 years of them saying that. Okay, no, it's free. The phone calls are free. You can call from your Gmail inbox. It's great. It's great.
It's worth it. Go check it out, folks. Okay, so the second thing I've come across now. I'm a major podcast listener, and I think currently I have like over 65 podcasts I'm subscribed to. Now, I don't listen to every episode of every podcast, but I go through and I can kind of pick and choose where I'm feeling each day. But I love podcasts. And up until this point, I've had a very specific podcast player that I've absolutely loved. But this week, I've had to make the change. I've had to switch away from my podcast app of choice. Up until now, I've been using an app called Instacast by a company called The Medio. Well, I've been getting these really weird notifications from them, basically saying, hey, make sure you're connected to the internet because your sync is not working. And I'm going, I'm on internet everywhere I'm at. What's going on here? So I went and did some digging. Apparently, the gentleman who has been running it has taken it not off of the active updating cycle to basically just killing it. So I'm now left with not having a podcast app. But never fear. I have a lot of friends who have been recommending one to me for a while, and I'm going to recommend it here now because, I think it's probably the best app you can find on iOS at this point. It's called Overcast.
Yeah, baby. And Overcast.
It's amazing. It really is great. I love it. So,
gee, who's been bugging you about Overcast for like a year?
You've been bugging me for a while, but I got to say, I've got people who've been bugging me since it came out. So
fair enough.
You're newer on my bugging list, but
I started bugging you when it was free. Once it became free.
Yeah. Well, and I actually considered buying it only because even before when I was using it full time, because the guy who developed it, Marco Arment, is the same guy who was behind Instapaper and who was one of the early guys with Tumblr. And when Tumblr sold to Yahoo, he made a killing. And then he sold Instapaper off, and so he had nothing he was developing. So he went and developed this Overcast app because he's also a podcaster, the Accidental Tech Podcast, as well as a number of other places. But I love Marco. I love what he does, and so I actually almost bought it even without ever using it. But I kind of thought, okay, I'm going to hold off. And now it is, like you said, it's free, totally free to use. It has some amazing features. The best is it cuts out all of the blank spaces in what you're listening to. I can't remember what that feature is called, though.
Smart Speed.
Remember what that's called?
Smart Speed,
yes. So if it has any kind of gaps in your podcast, like that just there, it'll just automatically shorten that down. So it will save you time as you're listening, and you can go into your settings and see how much time has it saved you in the app. And it's an incredible tool. I mean, it really is great. I know people who have saved full days at this point because they listen to so many podcasts, and you think that's ridiculous, but also quite incredible. So, it works really nice.
I was going to say with the Smart Speed, last time I checked, maybe within the last couple of weeks, I looked and I'm almost at 90 hours that it has saved me.
Wow. That's incredible. You do a lot of podcasting, my friend. You do a lot of podcast listening.
Well, with my commute being what it is, I'm listening on the way to and from work. And, whenever I do stuff around the house and can put my backpack on and throw the iPad in it, I'm listening.
Yeah, I'm the same way. So it's a great app. It's got a phenomenal icon as well. I'm one of those weird guys that I like to have my app icons also look kind of cool. I don't like if the app has an awful icon, I'm less likely to use it. I know I'm very, very, very finicky with some of my things, but it's got a phenomenal icon. Great tool. And if you like podcasts and you are an iOS user, check out Overcast.
And it's really easy to switch. So
it's not bad at all.
So our EdTech recommendations for today are Google Voice and Overcast.
Yes.
Now, one of the reasons that I wanted to bring Derrick back and have him co-host is that he's got some awesome professional news that is basically part of this, the title of this episode, which is, and hopefully should still be if I haven't changed it, transitioning and EdTech transitions. So, Derrick, you're in the process of transitioning out of the classroom and into a pretty cool EdTech role. So please, the floor is again yours. What's going on with you professionally, man?
First part of June, I got an email from my technology director in my district. And he said, hey, here's a job you should consider applying for. And the position I applied for and later accepted was for the technology director of the Southwest Educational Development Center, dealing with 6 school districts in the southwest corner of Utah.
Now, what are you going to be doing in that role? Because it sounds like a big title, 6 school districts. It sounds like an undertaking of sorts. So what's involved for you now?
It's a pretty incredible thing. The role actually has changed. So they were in the process of kind of changing it up a little bit. And with that change, they felt like I fit really, really well with it, because at one point it was a whole lot of just like back-end server administration, network administration, kind of like you're hidden almost. You're in the total back seat of the whole area. You're running, making sure the backbone of these small districts are working. And they've transitioned it to be more of a trainer and a little bit more public facing. And so I'll be working with 2 of the best technology trainers, that I've ever met, in this role. Clint Stevens, who is amazing, SEDC Clint on Twitter. The guy is one of the best presenters I've ever seen. And one of my dear friends, Chris HoET, who is also an incredible. She is a media specialist. She was a librarian before she took this role, and the woman knows her media and this online kind of stuff. She's a great tool and is a phenomenal presenter as well. And I'll grab you her Twitter handle in a moment. But these 2 are amazing, and I get to join them with doing trainings across the southwest region of Utah. And already last week we spent a day in Kanab, Utah, which is a remote, kind of a smaller area, doing a training on Canvas, on the LMS tool Canvas, which is something that's used a lot in Utah because Canvas is a Utah-based company, or Instructure, who makes Canvas, is a Utah-based company. And then, so I did all that training, and then 2 days later, I'm in a different part of the state, also very remote, physically installing security cameras, drilling through the wall, running cable, physically hanging security cameras. So my job is going to be quite diverse, and I'll be working with superintendents in the region. I'll be working with teachers. We'll be physically handling hardware and making sure teachers have what they need.
So 2 questions based on this new role. Number 1, what are you going to miss, if anything, but I'm sure you will, what are you going to miss about being a classroom teacher? And number two, what are you most excited about this new position?
So it hasn't hit me yet, but I know I'm going to miss the kids. I'm just positive. It was actually a kind of a tough decision because I'd already received my class list, and I had a number of families showing up on that list that I was super excited to work with. It's always fun for me to see last names and see family names that I already know, and I get to work with a second time or a third time. And I had a couple on there that I was really excited to work with. I had a good buddy from college who I was going to work with his daughter, who is just an amazing student, an amazing girl. And it's going to be really rough to not have that day-to-day, day in and day out working with the kids. While that can be very tough and very challenging to do at times, I know it's going to be something I'm going to miss an incredible amount. The nice thing is with my new job, I'll still get to work with students, but it won't be on that same level. It won't be the same kids every day. And I won't be able to build that same rapport that I've built with students over the last 8 years. So that's probably the number one thing I'm going to miss is working with the students, as well as, I was at a phenomenal school. I was at one of the best schools in my school district, and it was amazing because we had phenomenal educators, phenomenal teachers, and staff members there. One of the hardest working custodians I've ever met in my life. I mean, the building itself was 10 years old, and people would walk in and say, "Wow, is this a brand new building?" I mean, that's the kind of work that he and his team put in. You didn't know how old the building was because that's how amazing he worked. Great teachers, and that's going to be something I'm going to miss as well, is having, a team of 40 teachers I'm working with to help kids. And so the kids and the teachers, that's going to be hard. Definitely.
I couldn't be more excited for you, and I think you're going to obviously flourish in this role. So I'm looking forward to, obviously since we're connected and we talk on the regular, hearing about your adventures this year. It's going to be fun for you.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'm excited to go through them. I'm excited to also share out what I'm doing. Working with a lot of rural school districts, districts where they have like 3 teachers for all of the elementary. For K-6, there's three teachers in the entire building, one of which is a principal part-time as well. We're talking very, very small areas, and I get to go in and work with these people and help them and pull out these tools and show these ways that they can hopefully help their students on levels that they haven't done before, or help them in ways where they're struggling to make things more effective. And so, and heck, I'm excited to learn how ingenuitive these people are, because the teachers are amazing. Anywhere you go, they're doing things, they're making things work, and you always wonder, how is that possible? And I'm excited to go in and learn from all these teachers that are just killing it for me in Southern Utah.
Since it's about transition, can you give briefly a little bit of insight into the process you went through from interviewing and what they asked of you to secure a position like this?
Okay, so this is an interesting process. So I had to turn everything in by mid-June. So from the time I found out about it to the time I actually applied, it was about a 2-week process. And I got everything turned in, and then I heard back the next day from the director, and she said, "Okay, we're going to be doing interviews, but we're going to wait till July." But then when the actual process came up, I got an email and was invited to come and interview. They liked what they saw on paper, and they said, come on up and interview. It was on a Tuesday, and Tuesday, July 5th, actually. And I was teaching a class in my school district, a summer course on some technology stuff. So I had to end my class early to drive the 45 minutes from my city to Cedar City, which is where this office is located. And I had to do a couple of things. They wanted me to basically bring a lesson plan of using technology, how I would teach a technology skill. And so, but I had to hand write it. I couldn't find it and bring it done. But because of my circumstance, they said I'm physically handwriting it out. And so it was kind of fun for me to kind of go back and again pull out my analog tools and use those analog tools to secure a very digital position. We got up there and I sat down to interview. And one of the ways these service centers are run is each of the superintendents of the districts that we work with sit on the board of directors for the service center. And so we had two of them, plus my director, and the lead network engineer for the office was there. I walked in, I got really nervous because before I walked in, a gentleman walked out who looked like he was a little more skilled, a little more experienced than what I had. I mean, I'm still fairly young in education, and I'm only 33 years old anyway, so I'm kind of feel like I'm on the younger end for what I was applying for. And it was interesting to go on and talk with these people and have a great conversation. But the hardest part of the whole interview was when the technical questions came out by our lead engineer, and he just raked me across the coals, man. He strung me up one side or the other, and it was rapid fire. How would you handle this issue? How about this issue? This issue? The wireless is down in a computer lab. What are you gonna do to fix it? How do you go through this? And I said, he said, what would you do? And I said, well, I'd actually would contact our district wireless specialist. He said, you can't reach him. I said, well, I'd try again. He said, well, he's dead. What's another way you're going to do it? I mean, just kind of crazy. It was kind of funny the way he was going through. And I got done with the whole interview. And even though I was talking with superintendents, that was probably the hardest part for me, was because I knew that was where it was going to really stick. And there were some areas that I was not as strong in, network engineering is one. The network analysis is an area that I'm not super strong with. And so I'm excited to learn about it. But that was probably the hardest part of the whole process. And I'd say with any kind of applying and interviewing process, you have to not be afraid to say, I don't really know on that, and I remember that a number of times I had to just say, I think I'd probably rely on my team to answer that one, because I actually don't have the knowledge personally, but I know that we have people here in this office that do, and I would have to rely on them pretty heavy initially until I can learn some more myself, and that's what I would hope to gain from a team here. And it was a good experience. It was rough, but it was a good experience.
That's a very great point about how to answer those tougher questions in an interview. What do you think ultimately won you the job?
That's a good question. I've actually not gone back and asked what it was specifically, but I know one of the things that they liked about me was that, like I said, they're transitioning it more to be more presenting. And I've done a lot of presenting. I've presented all over the state of Utah. I've presented in England. I've been all over the place presenting, and I feel very comfortable in presenting to groups of people. I often have to speak in church groups, and I teach lessons in church groups even there as well. So it's not just with kids in the classroom, but it's adults. It's all kinds of different topics, and I feel confident in that ability. And I think that was one of the strong points, because sometimes people who go for these kind of technology director positions, they tend to be more people that are kind of more in the background. They don't necessarily like the limelight. They don't like being out in front of the big groups. And maybe I think that was part of how I was able to get that, was that I told them, and I say this often, that I speak geek, but I also speak people, and I'm able to translate the geek to the regular person fairly well. And sometimes that's not a skill that everybody has. You either can only do one side or the other, but those that can speak both and translate it back and forth, I think is a really good skill, especially when you're working in education, because you've got teachers who are deathly scared to push the wrong button and blow up their computer, even though I've yet to hear of an instance of somebody dying from an exploding computer from pushing the wrong button. There are many teachers who feel like that's going to happen to them.
Well, we both know that that's not going to happen, and I must say, you've made me feel good, but you've also made me feel like, God, I wish I lived in Utah, because I could probably get a job in Utah. I don't think they're looking for those same things here in New Jersey, which is...
Come on out, Chris. We'll take you in Utah. We'll adopt you.
I mean, everything you just said about like how you phrase things and the points you made, I sit here and I think, I've made those same points in interviews, and it's just like, what are you looking for? that isn't that. So, I mean, it'll eventually come for me, so we'll see. But I don't think I'm moving to Utah.
Well, we'd take you if you want to come on out. We'd love to have you. Come join Utah.
Maybe I know there are people out there who, they get to fly to their jobs, and, maybe we'll figure that out.
Yeah, all kinds of crazy stuff. One of the schools I will be working with takes 5 hours to drive to from my office. So I'm a 45-minute drive from my house to my office. And so if I'm going to go to that school, I've got to then drive an additional 5 hours from my office to that school. It's called Lake Powell School, and it's one of the most remote schools in southwestern Utah.
Well, I know
I
what
have
you
yet
can
to be there.
I was going to say, I know what you can do in those 5 hours since you're subscribed to 67 podcasts.
There's a lot of podcasts to be listening to, definitely there. So that'll be something that I'm hoping to do. So I'm excited to go. I have a personal goal to physically walk in every school in the region before the year is up. And it's pretty daunting, not because there's a lot of buildings per se, but because they're so spread out, some of them. Like I said, 5 hours to get to one of the schools. So
I would say it would be daunting if you said my goal is to walk to every school. So that's out of the question. So it's really not that bad.
No, not walking, but physically walking in them. So it'll be interesting. See how it goes.
Nice. Well, again, best of luck with that. And you're going to do great. And based on that, I mean, we'll bring you back on maybe halfway through the year and reassess, and maybe you could co-host a Christmas episode.
Hey, ho, ho, ho. Do it.
All right. So let's get over to the House of EdTech VIP. And this episode's House of EdTech VIP is Mr. Chad Brinkley. Chad is from Arkansas, and Chad has been working directly with K-12 schools for the past 6 years. The last 3, he's worked in sales, support, and training as a partner with E-Instruction. Recently, Chad has transitioned into a one-to-one technology integration consultant role, and he's currently working with 2 school districts in Arkansas to implement one-to-one initiatives. Education technology is his passion, but he is also a youth pastor, and he enjoys working with students and their families. Chad is married with 2 incredible daughters, and sometimes they let him rock it as a softball coach. You can find him on Twitter. He is at TechWithChad, TechWithChad, and you can also find him on places like Fire Talk and sometimes on Blab, depending if Blab is going to still exist or not. But Chad is doing some amazing things, and you need to connect with Chad. While I have you here, Derrick, are you connected with Tech with Chad? Do you know Chad?
I'm not. I don't know Chad, but I'm going to be searching for him right now.
There you go. So, Chad Brinkley, you are the House of EdTech VIP. And that's going to do it for this episode of the House of EdTech, episode number 67. Derrick, did you have fun?
Had a blast. Thanks for having me, Chris. Always fun to be on the House of EdTech. Joining you here.
And it's always a pleasure to have you, and I look forward to having you on again. And speaking of thanks, I want to give another thank you to this episode's sponsor, SummerPD.com, for supporting this episode. If you go to SummerPD.com, you can save $10 on all of their courses by using the promo code House of EdTech, and that's all together, no spaces. Keep the conversation going. Visit the brand new website, chrisnessy.com/67, and that's going to have all the show notes and links that Derrick shared and I shared, and everything we talked about in this episode. And if you've never been to the website, now's a good time to go and kick the tires on it. I would appreciate any feedback you have on the episode, the site. Let me know, especially if you find something that doesn't work. That's going to help me out a lot. Of course, I would love to connect with you and hear your thoughts on the information in this and every episode. So on the website, click Share Feedback, and that's going to give you my email and all the ways that you can connect with me. Derrick, what are some of the ways that people can connect with you?
So you're going to edtechbabble.net is my website. That's a great place to see what I'm up to. If you want to connect with me on any of the social networks, just go to pick your network and type in Lars 3EB, LARS number 3EB. I'm that pretty much anywhere the internet exists.
Awesome. And I am, of course, on Twitter at Mr. Nessy, MrNesi. and just use the hashtag HouseOfEdTech so I see those tweets. And if you enjoy the podcast, and of course you do, especially if you make it this far into the episode, I'd like you to do a couple of things. Number one, go tell somebody about the show. Word of mouth is the best way to share great podcasts you love, this and anything that you listen to. Number two, please rate and review the podcast on iTunes. Your positive rating and honest review are going to help and keep the podcast front and center for others to discover and enjoy. And you can also support the show through Patreon. Just go to chrisnessy.com/awesome and you can learn how you can support the show that way. On the next episode of the podcast, number 68, I'm going to be welcoming back Stacy Lindis, and we're going to be chatting about sketch notes. Sorry you're not going to be here for that one, Derek.
That's going to be a good episode. Stacy's amazing, and she is a queen of sketchnoting. That's going to be a good episode.
Yes, it will be, and that's going to come out on August 28th, 2016. Until next time, thanks for joining me, and remember,
using technology isn't difficult. Just give it a try.
The House of EdTech is a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. The Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. For more, go to edupodcastnetwork.com.